The mid lane is all about tempo and how you set it for your team. You can't really get away with picking carry mids anymore, because if you do, you kind of force the rest of your team to try to have to do your job with a much less advantageous position than what you have yourself as the mid laner. It can kind of just ruin the game, so you can't really do that anymore. A quick rundown for the mid lane is that you need to win your lane by CSing better than your enemy and not dying. Matchups are also important, but I can't explain them all. We'll be here all day, but I can give you some examples to point out how to look at them. For instance, Quap can beat a Shadow Fiend with the power of raindrops and remembering what the last raise that SF used was. For instance, if SF medium raises you, you have to stand where the medium raise was and not allow him to maneuver himself back into a position to use any other raises. Or Viper versus Storm, how in this matchup Storm may want to go boots first because you'll probably get shoved back to base over and over, and rather than just try to go bottle and wait until you can jungle and just hope that the 2-minute rune can save you and you can get one wave, you can go boots first, except that you're probably going to get shoved back to lane over and over and over again, and have the boots to enable you to run back to lane so you can come back faster and miss less EXP and gold overall. As for laning, whichever one of you has more money and EXP has just won the lane. It is that simple. Stand closer to the enemy creeps when you last hit them, and further away when you deny is going to be key on ranged heroes to not get harassed into oblivion, but also to ensure that you get as many creeps as possible. Ranged creeps are 2/5 of the EXP of a creep wave, so you want to use your spells to secure these from a safe distance and not just get harassed down by being too greedy. If you haven't seen it, there's a video that I have on my channel about laning and the fundamentals that you need to have just to play the lane. I highly suggest you watch this because I will not be reiterating every single core principle that is in that video here, otherwise it would just bloat the video unnecessarily. However, we are going to double back to double waving. Creeps matter a lot in laning, and a well-timed stun inside of a big creep wave at the right time can be the difference between a cheeky kill or just you having a horrible lane. I've seen players beat Huskar mid with Ember by just trying to double wave the Huskar and then rooting him inside the creep wave at like level 2 or 3 while the Huskar is 1 level under because the Ember shoved the wave faster, and then I've seen the Huskar just die outright to an Ember. It's stuff like that, using the amount of creeps to your advantage, that are really going to build a lead for you in a way that is substantial and significant and help you climb forth in the lane to build some sort of lead. Try to be conscious of how creep waves bounce back and forth. If your opponent is trying to shove the wave, think about why they're shoving the wave, and if they want to try to shove it so that it'll bounce back to them, and then they can freeze it on their high ground, consider shoving it in return to try to balance that out, to not give them the opportunity to freeze it. Or, not or. 15 seconds before the rune spawn, you're going to want to shove the wave as well, because it'll ensure that you put your opponent in a position where they either have to choose to miss a creep wave or miss a rune, or they'll try to do the same thing to you, and then you'll both get a rune for equal cost. Ganking is a loaded topic for mid laners in lower MMR because every side lane is going to cry for you to come and fix their lane. Don't do this. This is a terrible, terrible mistake. You want to avoid ganking for your team unless you lost your lane and your hero needs to make up the difference with rotations, in which case, don't help the lane that lost. Go to whatever lane is winning. That'll make you more likely to get a kill and keep the pressure on the lane that is losing for their team, thus pulling pressure away from the lane on your team that is losing the most, because they'll inevitably have to bring the heroes away from that one lane to alleviate the pressure on their lost lane. You can gank if you get a haste rune, in which case you want to gank the lane that's closest to the rune. For instance, if the rune spawns top, you want to gank top, etc. You can gank if it's a counter gank, and they are diving your team, and you have a TP scroll, and it's like a pretty good fight for you. Just TP in, and then that'll be a really easy way for you to fight. Counter ganking is generally kind of better for the mid laner than ganking outright, because you want to try to maximize your time in lane and miss as few waves as possible and miss as little farm as possible, because the item timings on your hero are extremely important. You want to play quick, and the quicker you get your items, the better for you. Trying to make sure your teammates lose less hard doesn't actually win you games. When you load into the game as mid, you want to be thinking about the mid game and how you're going to approach it and what your team's win condition is and what the enemy team's win condition is. The best example I can give you is if you're playing Storm Spirit and there's a Lifestealer, an AM, or a Juggle on the enemy team, what you want to be thinking about is, do I want an Orchid in this game? Because against those heroes, if I get the Orchid fast enough, The idea is that they can't deal with it until they get their second item, their general defensive item, and they're going to have to get a farming item first. And by the time they finish their first farming item, you will be finishing an Orchid. And you can stall out that defensive item timing and just keep pushing them back further and further behind your carry's item. You can erode their pace of the game by putting pressure on them until they get their defensive item and just slowly pushing their timings back a little bit at a time. Sure, inevitably they will probably get their items, but that's not the point. The point is that you have opened up the opportunity for you to pressure them enough for your carry to overtake them. And that's kind of what you want to try to do as a mid lane. It's you want to open up the map for your team, create tempo and pressure on the map in the places that it's important to create tempo and pressure for. At around 10 minutes, you want to be thinking about the first siege creep spawn. If it's feasible to take the enemy mid T1 with a siege creep, or the enemy T1 with a siege creep, you want to try to do that. If not, just try to focus on getting your items, shove your lane, jungle, consider giving up your lane to a support if they need the EXP, because you should be able to jungle at a moderately decent pace at this stage in the game. Your next big moves are either going to be dictated by the enemies being overly aggressive and your team punishing them, or you finishing your item timings. Once you finish your first item, you want to start to look to open up the map for your carry and slow down the enemy carry. If the enemy safe lane tier 1 is still up at around 15 minutes, you and your offlaner are going to want to try to play with your siege creep that spawns at 15 minutes to try to get this tower down. Otherwise, your map is going to start to feel highly claustrophobic, and the enemy is going to start to put pressure on your lanes that they should be putting pressure on, and choke you out of the map and the resources in the game, and you'll slowly just feel the game become tighter and tighter and harder to come back to. The ideal order of taking towers is, if the enemy has a big ancient stacks in their triangle, you either take the mid T1 into stopping them from taking their ancient stacks, or interfere with them taking their stacks and then bounce out of that one engagement to take the mid T1 if you win it. Otherwise, the order is almost always enemy safe lane tier 1 into mid T1, then you can either chill until Roche or take the safe lane T2. After the safe lane T2, you do want to look to Roche before mid T2 unless the enemy just dies to you, and then you have a free opportunity to push the mid T2. After that, after the mid T2, is when you want to start putting a higher prioritization on the Roche and then getting Roche so that you can take high ground. You've noticed we haven't really talked a lot about offlane towers. They're not very relevant. If you could get them, that's nice, but the bigger idea is that you want to take over the enemy jungle, set up vision there, and in my carry video I talk about the way that the map gets shaped at around 15 minutes, but once you take these towers, the map stops being shaped across by the river and starts being shaped in half, up and down, basically cut in half by the line that the mid towers draw in the center of the map. Whereas if you are Dire, the right side of the map becomes yours, and if you are Radiant, the left side of the map becomes yours. Going into the mid game is basically the same for every single role, but I'll reiterate it here. You want to just focus on shoving waves to bait an enemy TP, and as soon as they TP, you and your team want to move away from wherever they TP'd and pick a fight on the other side of the map, and then go into Roche off of a one-team fight, and then push high ground with an Aegis. It's basically the same in every single game. Force these TPs, try to find picks, or play where you know where they can't rotate to, or you are aware that they TP 2 heroes top and they have 3 heroes bottom, so you go to fight the 3 heroes bottom or the 2 heroes top, whichever is more important. The last thing we want to talk about is team fighting. Team fighting is the last major core principle that we have about mid, and the most important thing about team fighting is target prioritization and your own positioning. Your own positioning is sort of going to come down to you paying attention to enemy's vision and your ability to sift through the situation, and I can't exactly teach that perfectly. You just want to try not to get caught so that you can catch the enemies that are important to catch. You want to look at the enemy team composition and identify the biggest threats to your team losing the fight. Is it the enemy carry? Can you kill the enemy carry? Do they have a Dazzle or an Oracle which will stop you from killing the important hero? If so, the Dazzle or the Oracle then become the highest priority and they need to be focused first every fight. Try to find the easiest kill you can that has the highest impact on these fights. This usually ends up meaning that supports are going to get focused first in every game. Silencer on the enemy team, you need to kill him first so that your team can actually fight before he globals. Warding, okay, I guess warding and starting items are, before the game starts, you want to think about, does my hero buy a bottle? If my hero gets a bottle, my starting items are probably going to be 4 branches of Fairy Fire and Tangos, because I want to try to maximize my damage to last hit and also try to make sure I have my bottle by the first rune spawn. If not, then it's probably fine to try to load up on stats and Tangos so that you can out-CS and deny the enemy if they want to try to rush a bottle. Warding is mainly about matchup. You want to think about Are they going to go for a D ward? If so, if they have a Zeus even, maybe you put your ward slightly in your own tower's range to sort of create a situation where if the Zeus wants to D ward it because he's going to see it with Bolt, that he has to put himself in a weird position to do so, and it protects your ward a little bit. You want to think about, do I need to see the enemy high ground, or do I want to just see the first runes that spawn because the enemy has a way of protecting both runes, like a puck? And I am a melee hero against a puck, and I need to just prioritize securing one of the runes by either seeing that he is committed to one and walking towards the other, or faking him out by going towards one, seeing that he's trying to match me, and then going for the other.